Hey everyone, Boker Tov. So yesterday we talked about transactions and the concept of zachin le'adam shelo b'fanav, that you're allowed to acquire something for someone else even if it's not in front of him because it's something that's good for him. And we spoke about giving gifts on Shabbat. So one of our listeners, and thank you for listening, asked me a question. So I wanted to clarify a few points about gifting on Shabbat. So we said number one is the easiest way is once I have in mind, say I want to go to my friend Reuven for Shabbat. So like we said, I have this bottle of wine. I give the bottle of wine, let's say, to a friend, and I said, I want you to act as a shaliach for Reuven, lift it up and pretend you're Reuven, and now give this ownership now belongs to Reuven. If you do that before Shabbat, you're clear in all these situations. What if you didn't? And now how could you give certain gifts, or can you give certain gifts on Shabbat? So just to clarify a few points. Number one is, if it's letzorech Shabbat, if it's for the necessity of Shabbat, it's allowed to be given even without doing the zachin le'adam before Shabbat. So let's say you go to your neighbor and say, look, I need some plates, I ran out of paper plates, can I borrow some? Or can I have some, right? You're not going to pay him back. And he said, don't worry, have it, take it. It's letzorech Shabbat, that's allowed. Even though now we just changed ownership. These plates were owned by him, and now they're owned by me, that's allowed. Now, food as well, which is letzorech Shabbat, that's also allowed. So a person comes with a wine, with a cake, etc. He didn't do anything before Shabbat. He's just giving it to you here, over at your house. Thanks for inviting me, and now you have it. Now the person that listened to the shiur asked the question. He says, sometimes people bring a bottle of wine. You already have a bottle of wine open. You're not necessarily going to open that one. So what about that? So, letzorech Shabbat means that you need it for Shabbat, and ideally that it's going to be open and drunk. Even if it's going to be open a little bit and drunk a little bit, then that is the way it's supposed to be. If not, there's two other things you could do. Number one is that you keep it letzorech subsequent Shabbat. So you say, okay, I'm not going to use it this Shabbat, but I have to use it on another Shabbat. So now it's letzorech Shabbat. So that gifting and that changing of transaction, of ownership, is going to be covered. Or you, like we said yesterday, you have in mind not to acquire it yet. So as I have in mind, even though it's in my house, it's here, I don't own it yet, and it's still his ownership until after Shabbat. You have that in mind, and we said you don't have to say it out. You could even have it in mind, and that works. Another case, let's say a person wants to give his wife a gift on Shabbat, or a gift on Yom Tov. It's Chag, it's somebody who wants to give his wife a gift. So there as well, he can give it on Shabbat, because really the ownership remains theirs. A husband and wife are like one. It's not transfer of ownership, it's the same owners. So therefore he's allowed to give his wife a gift on Shabbat. We mentioned yesterday the gifting of a bar mitzvah sidur or sefer at shul. So like I said, I do lift it up before Shabbat, but if one weren't to do that, it's still allowed, because it could be called letzorech Shabbat, that this boy now is going to read from it, learn from it on Shabbat. It's letzorech Shabbat. One last point is that if it's letzorech mitzvah, it's for the necessity of a mitzvah, it's allowed as well. And we have a few cases like that. Number one, a common case on Sukkot, someone doesn't have a lulav, so we give them, they're supposed to own the lulav, so either we give them a matana al manat le'achzir, we give them a gift, but they're supposed to give it back, or if it's the subsequent days of Sukkot, they're allowed to have ownership of it. So you give it to them, they own it, now you give it back to me, I own it, we just transferred ownership, but it's for a mitzvah, it's allowed. Or another case is, let's say Erev Pesach is on Shabbat, Erev Pesach. So now, whatever we say, that Shabbat, you eat bread. Once Shabbat is the Seder. So the bread, in case I didn't find, some pieces, I say it's hefker, or I give leftover pieces to a goy, I transfer ownership to a goy, but because it's the tzorech mitzvah, then it is allowed. So that clears up gifting on Shabbat and Yom Tov. Minchat tonight at 5:20. Have a good day, everyone.